Charlie Kirk's bullet does not match. Well, not gonna lie, you got my attention now with that headline. Last Friday, the defense team of Charlie Kirk's alleged murderer, Tyler Robinson, filed a motion to delay the preliminary hearing by at least 6 months. And buried inside that motion was a sentence that set the internet on fire. The defense claims that an ATF report, and that is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, says, and I quote, "The ATF was unable to identify the bullet recovered at autopsy to the rifle tied to Robinson." And that is incredibly relevant for reasons that you're about to find out. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and let's get down to it right away. So, here's the thing. When a forensic firearms examiner looks at a bullet and compares it to a weapon, there are only 3 possible conclusions. 1. Identification means the markings on the bullet are consistent enough to say, this specific gun fired at. 2 is elimination. That means the barrel characteristics are fundamentally different. Maybe the wrong caliber, maybe wrong rifling pattern, and the gun is ruled out entirely. And then there's the one in the middle, inconclusive, which means the bullet was too damaged or too fragmented or too deformed to leave enough microscopic markings for the examiner to say yes or no. And that middle one, inconclusive, is exactly what the ATF reported about the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk. Now, I can understand how the word inconclusive sounds a lot like the bullet does not match. But this is a bit more complicated than that. The rifle recovered near the scene was identified as a Mauser Model 98 chamber in .30-06 caliber. That is a high-powered hunting round, and the ammunition used was apparently a soft-point round, a bullet specifically designed to fragment on impact with soft tissue. That is what it's built to do. So when a soft-point bullet traveling at over 2,700 feet per second hits a human body, it tears through an artery, hits a vertebra, and it's later recovered during the autopsy. How much of the original barrel markings do you think survive on that bullet? Sometimes enough of them, sometimes not enough. And when the answer is not enough, the examiner writes unable to identify, because that is the honest answer, even if it's not what the prosecution wants to hear. But we have to keep in mind that this is far from rare. In a study published in the Journal of Forensic Science International, examiners returned inconclusive results on over 20% of bullet comparisons, even when the bullets came from a known source. And that is 1 in 5 bullets that cannot be traced to the gun. So the defense obviously takes this ATF report, wraps it in legal language, and files a motion asking for a 6-month delay. And the phrase they use is brilliant from a legal strategy standpoint. They say they may offer this ATF analyst's testimony as exculpatory evidence. Evidence that clears the defendant. Evidence that could help Tyler Robinson walk free. And you have all the right to tell me at this point, hey, pump the brakes, kid. What do you mean Robinson walking free? Well, it's pretty simple. Since the ATF cannot prove that the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk is directly connected to the gun that Tyler Robinson fired, then there's a door open for a second shooter theory. Robinson's defense could argue, sure, my client held that gun and fired it, which would explain the DNA and the casings, but the bullet that actually killed the victim did not come from his rifle. Someone else was there. And this is actually possible. This is something that Robinson's attorneys can do. In a high-profile case, inconclusive can be spun to sound like innocent to a jury that expects a perfect scientific match to make their job easier. But notice what Robinson's attorneys are not saying. They are very careful in not saying the bullet came from a different gun. They are not presenting an elimination finding. They're not naming a second weapon. They're taking an inconclusive result, a forensic "I can't tell," and presenting it as if it were evidence of innocence. And to be fair, that's what defense attorneys do. That's their job, create reasonable doubt. But there's a difference between "we can't prove it was his gun" and "it was not his gun." And the filing never crosses that line. It just lets the headlines do it for them. And, well, the Daily Mail was more than happy to oblige. But here's what that headline conveniently leaves out. The spent shell casing recovered at the scene, the brass that ejects from the rifle after firing, it does match the weapon. And casings retain clearer markings than bullets because they impact the harder metal of the firing mechanism. Now, I have mentioned Robinson's DNA, and turns out that there's also a problem with that. Robinson's DNA was found on the trigger of the rifle, yes, and his DNA was on the fire cartridge casing, yes, and his DNA was on the towel wrapped around the weapon as well. But according to the latest court filings, there are DNA mixtures in the evidence, especially in the bullet casings. It seems that both the fired and unfired cartridges show a mixture of DNA, which would suggest that they were handled by more than one person. And now that's interesting. But nevertheless, Robinson also sent these text messages to his roommate minutes after the shooting, saying that he needed to retrieve his rifle from his drop point. He left a handwritten note under his keyboard confessing to the plan. His own father identified the weapon from crime scene photos. But now I want to address the elephant in the room, because I have seen some of your comments. The deep state did it. Israel did it. Robinson is a patsy. All the evidence is planted. Fine. Let's play that out for a second. Let's say that a deep state agency actually orchestrated this entire assassination, planted a rifle with Robinson's DNA, fabricated text messages, engraved memes on shell casings to match his online history, and pressured his own father into identifying the weapon. Why would they leave the bullet in this ambiguous state? If you can plant DNA on a trigger, you can certainly plant a matching bullet. The one piece of evidence that would seal the case beyond all question, and they just forgot? So that's the conspiracy? An all-powerful apparatus that stages everything perfectly except the one thing that actually connects the weapon to the wound? Okay, well, that is a massive blunder in that operation, if you ask me. So here's what is actually happening. The ATF examiner couldn't get a definitive match, not because the evidence points to another weapon, but because the bullet didn't survive in good enough condition. Inconclusive, not exculpatory. The defense is using this to buy time and create a narrative. The headlines are doing, well, what headlines do. But the bullet didn't not match. The bullet couldn't even talk. The ones that can actually talk are Robinson's parents. Have you ever wondered why Robinson's parents haven't tried to defend their son? Have you seen them giving any sort of press conference claiming their son is innocent? That he's been framed for something that he didn't do? Of course, the explanation would be that they are on it as well, in some way that makes this conspiracy actually way more complicated. Again, let me know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Battle Language Guy. Much love and bliss.